So there is a lot of MMA on this weekend. There is going to be the UFC Shanghai card, there is going to be the PFL finals, there is going to be the Contender Series, and there is also going to be the Road to UFC Shanghai card as well, which is the semi-finals for the Road to UFC tournament of 2025, as well as hosting a couple of UFC fights as well on this card, which is honestly really interesting in my opinion, but I do kind of like how they've done that. I do apologize if this video is a bit more kind of like low quality or whatever from audio technical or just my excitement. Not because I'm not excited for the card. It's just nearly 11 p.m. and I had an exam. Yes, I did have an exam today that finished at 9 p.m. So I got home, had some dinner, and finalized my study for this card. And here we are. We are here with my predictions, and I'm going to go through them relatively quickly because it is nearly 11 p.m. and I will be honest, guys, I do want to go to bed because I unfortunately have a meeting at university very early on in the morning tomorrow. Yoon Jang takes on Kitt Campbell here. This is one of those Road to UFC bonus fights that's not part of the tournament. It's going to be at 170 pounds, and Kitt Campbell really impressed me in his last one. Now, it didn't last long. He knocked out Shogo Saito very quickly, but I do believe if he can beat Yoon Jang, they're gonna be forced to sign him to the promotion. I mean, would have won 2 bonus fights in the Road to UFC tournament, and I think he does. Now, here's the thing about Yoon Jang. I think he's a very talented fighter. He's only 22 years old, but I do just have my worries a little bit. I don't think his striking is as good as Kitt Campbell's, and I do know that he's a wrestler, and if you do look throughout Kitt Campbell's entire career, nearly all of his losses have come to guys that have been able to take him down, especially Isi Fikatefo is a very good example of this, a very short wrestler. Kevin Jusei even was a judoka, of course, before he came into the UFC and striked a little bit more, but I just do like Campbell's chances in this matchup, given the fact that I think he is going to be the much better striker. Yoon Jang, I don't think his striking defense is that good, but he does have a very good win on his record against Takashi Saito. I can't take that against him, but I'm going to go with Campbell here. Maybe as a big underdog, I don't know, to upset Yoon Jang with a knockout. And now we've got the first fight of the 125-pound tournament. It's between Shuai Yin and Aaron To. And here's the thing, I was really high on Shuai Yin a couple of years ago, and then he lost to, he lost to this fella, but he also lost to Kiru Sahota. And kind of ever since then, I've not really been all that interested in him. And I do just kind of think that maybe Shuai, just personally, I think that I overrated him a little bit. He did get a big knockout in his last fight, which was fun, but he was kind of throwing down in that matchup before getting the KO. And I do consider most of his skill set to be in the wrestling department. And Aaron To, he did lose, of course, to Elijah Smith, who was able to mix it up against him in the striking and the wrestling, but that was at 135 pounds. He's come down to 125 pounds. I think this is a much more appropriate weight class for him. I definitely thought he was a guy that could potentially make 125 before the Contender Series, but it's always kind of hard to tell how guys can make these weight cuts. And I think that Aaron To was my pick to win the entire flyweight tournament. I think the winner of this fight does win the tournament. And I do think that Aaron To wins. And the reason why is I think that the pressure of To is going to be like the secret to defeating Shuai. And Shuai, like on the feet, he did show that he can hit hard, but I think he can get pressured. And if he's moving backwards, those takedowns are much less effective. And he's also shown as well against big opponents. Not that Aaron To is a really big guy for the weight class. He does struggle a little bit as well, like Kiru Sahota was able to. So I am picking To. Most people are picking To. I think that there's a chance he could even be an underdog in this matchup himself. But yes, I am picking him to win. And now we can go up to another CKB guy, a guy that I feel a lot less confident in. But honestly, guys, I am going to continue to fade Van E. Nghiem in this matchup. Or I believe you actually do pronounce his name Yin Yi Van. I apologize, but I've got to go with Lawrence Louis still. Yes, I did lose a relatively considerable amount of money betting on Rui Amira to beat Nghiem in his last fight. But Rui Amira still stood there and did absolutely nothing. He just let Van E. Nghiem just attack him. And if you do watch his fights, you can tell he's a very skilled striker. However, he did show a massive hole in this matchup here against Felipe Nego Chadel, I think is how you say his name, which he did win the rematch, but like still from Nghiem, you can tell he just doesn't really have any wrestling. And I know he was able to pop up against Amura, but Amura is an idiot. I'm so angry about that. Lawrence Louis, he did get into an absolute firefight against King He Zhang here. And, you know, Zhang Qinghe is not really a very high-level opponent, but I did kind of like the fact that Louis can dog it out, because I think that if he does that, and he does close the distance, and he does clinch, and he does wrestle, I know CKB guys aren't wrestlers, but trust me, that is how you beat Nghiem. If he decides that he's not going to wrestle, then this pick is going to look stupid, because Nghiem is a very talented striker. Very talented striker. But if Louis wrestles, man, trust me, I think that you can see a lot of sort of opportunities for him. And once again, the popular pick is Louis. I was expecting the underdog to be Louis in this matchup too. There are no odds out for this fight, for any of these fights as well, by the way. Sebastian Szalay, he was my pick. I believe it's actually Szalay. Once again, just pronouncing names incorrectly at 11 PM on a Monday night. But I think Szalay, he does win this one. I think he wins the entire tournament, by the way. I am very, very high on him. He looked fantastic against Bergen GLSE, who was probably another one of those guys that could have gone on to win the entire tournament if he beat Szalay. And prior to that, he has been pretty good guys on the regional scene. Very good boxer and wrestling to max as well. Chang Min Yoon here, he did have a very close fight against Yawei is how I called him. And, you know, it was actually a lot more of an entertaining matchup than I expected, because watching the tape on Jinwei, I wasn't really that impressed whatsoever. And then he also had that weird split draw against Jae Park, which I think they must have given a 10-10 in round 1 for it to somehow be a draw. I don't speak Korean, so I don't know how that happened. But yeah, Chang Min Yoon, he can push a pace. He does have good cardio. But I think Szalay is just a little bit better everywhere. You know, he's got good boxing. He showed he's got good wrestling as well in his last fight. I think we see another decision for Szalay, and I think he does win the tournament. Potentially. I mean, there's dangerous guys later on in the card, I tell you that. And speaking of dangerous guys, Agulali takes on Namsrai Batbayar. I love Namsrai Batbayar. I love Agulali. These guys are both going to put on a very exciting matchup. I just don't think that Agulali is going to give him the opportunity to do it. He starts this fight by running, sprinting into the middle of the octagon, and just immediately starts shooting takedowns, starts throwing down, knocks out Marido Saikia in seconds. And Namsrai Batbayar, he had a epic fight against Wataru Yamauchi. This was so fun. He is a brawler, man. Like, he's an absolute insane fighter, just throwing down all the time. I just don't know if he's going to be able to defend the takedowns of Agulali, because that is what Agulali is probably going to do in this matchup. And I think that the winner of this fight is going to have a very good fight with the winner of Yin Shui versus Aaron To. But Agulali is the pick here. I think if he gets the wrestling going especially, we're going to see an early finish out of him in this fight. And we move up to 155 pounds. This one is interesting to me just because Jae Hyun Park looked so impressive against Jack Becker in his fight. You know, he out-wrestled Jack Becker, and he just looked really good, especially being only 23 years old. But Don Marfan did beat Yuji Yannick FO Vega, and I did pick Yuji Yannick to win that matchup. I think I picked him with relatively low confidence compared to what I was seeing online with a lot of people picking Yuji Yannick with a lot of confidence. But I did say in that matchup, no matter who wins between Don Marfan and Yuji Yannick, they're going to win the tournament. So I'm still going to stick with that in my opinion. I do think that Yuji Yannick and Jae Hyun Park are actually very similar in like the overall skill set, like what they bring to the table. Because Yuji Yannick was just trying to wrestle against Don Marfan, wasn't really finding any success at all. And I think that Jae Hyun Park is probably going to try and do the exact same thing. Now, I think that maybe he's going to be able to do it a lot more effectively than Yuji Yannick, and also be a bit more effective on the feet than Yuji Yannick, potentially. But I do think that Don Marfan in this fight here should be able to kind of defend a lot of those takedowns from Park. He's a decent enough striker. Now, he's not a fantastic striker, in my opinion, but he's a good striker. But BJJ is where he does bread his butter. I think we're going to see another decision at a Don Marfan. Probably a control-based decision if I was to kind of make a prediction on that. And now we've got an interesting one, because Sulangrangbo takes on Sim Kai Xiong, and I really don't know how to rate Sulangrangbo, because I was not familiar with this guy at all before the Contender Series in any absolute way whatsoever. And then you can kind of tell that he's a decent enough striker, but I didn't think he was going to be good enough to knock out Peter Deniso in the first round. But the more concern that I have as well is I don't know what this guy's wrestling looks like at all, because he's taken on a wrestler. Kai Xiong is a wrestler, and in my opinion, a pretty good wrestler at that. Now, he actually has a loss to Peter Deniso, who Sulangrangbo just beat, if you wanted to really MMA math it out, because he is a victim on the feet. Like, as long as the fighter is striking, Kai Xiong is going to be in trouble. But the thing is, at the same time, wrestler versus striker, quite typically the wrestler is able to initiate their own wrestling and get the takedown, especially considering I just don't know how good Sulangrangbo's wrestling is whatsoever. So this might be an underdog pick here, because I am picking Jang here, who was the not the Tapology favorite. I think we see him wrestle. Now, he didn't have a fantastic performance against Kuya Ito, but I did say that Kuya Ito was probably going to win the entire tournament, and Kai Xiong beat him. So, you know, like, if I wanted to apply that logic again, then I do go with Zhang. But styles make fights. Sulangrangbo, I don't know much about him. Even after his Road to UFC fight, I don't know much about him. But Kai Xiong, I know a lot about. He's a wrestler. Sulangrangbo seems to be a striker. I like the idea of the wrestling of Zhang in this fight, if you wanted my honest opinion. And now, once again, we've got another guy from China that I just am not that familiar really with at all. Yawei. I just, you know, like, I don't know anything about this guy again. He submitted Denny Deffer, but like I watched tape on Denny Deffer. You can still do it because all of his fights are on YouTube. It just wasn't very impressive at all. He just kind of stands there. He's massive for the weight class, but he just doesn't do anything really at all. And then, of course, Yawei ended up submitting him in the first round. But Sang-ok Kim, he's been here. He's done it before. I think actually in the past, he fought on Road to UFC against Rong Zhu. And he did lose that fight, obviously, but I think that he didn't put up a bad performance by any means. He did just beat Daichi Kamiya. And if I'm not mistaken, Daichi Kamiya was actually the, he wasn't the champion. I was about to lie to you guys. I thought he was the champion of Eternal MMA. That would have been incorrect. But he is a guy that is undefeated in Eternal MMA, at least. And that was an impressive win there from Sang-ok Kim. I think that Sang-ok Kim should be able to go out there and out-wrestle Yawei in this matchup. Once again, though, just full transparency. Much more familiar personally with Sang-ok Kim than I am with Yawei. I think we see Sang-ok Kim go out there and get takedowns over Yawei. And now, Lee Kaiwen versus Keiichiro Nakamura. Maybe biased, but I love Lee Kaiwen. I really do. He follows me on Instagram. Me and him are buds. Actually, I think I've been sending him a few messages over the last I guess couple of months or so, just kind of messaging him about his training. And you know, I don't think he speaks English, but you know, he's sending me emojis, so I think he's doing well. The thing about Lee Kaiwen, though, I've got to be honest, he is so inconsistent. You do not know what this guy is going to look like on fight night. He come in there, he absolutely dominated and absolutely smoked Liu Kai in just over a minute, and then he went out there against Kuyakanda, put on a terrible performance, didn't really throw any volume. Was attempting takedowns, but it was just clinch work. It was awful. And then he got subbed in the first round against Yijia. Not something that you do like to see. He did get a couple of wins afterwards, but, you know, going to decision with a guy that does have a losing record is terrifying to me. But he does have crazy power in his hands, and he does have like a national level Chinese wrestling base. And also on top of that, he's massive for the weight class. Keiichiro Nakamura. Very good footwork, and he is probably going to have footwork that's going to frustrate Lee Kaiwen, because Lee Kaiwen is going to be trying to chase this guy down the entire fight, and Nakamura is going to be moving around and just kind of popping away at Lee Kaiwen. You know, he's fast, he's got good footwork, he got a big KO against Jae Hyun Park, who was probably the favorite to win the whole thing, including against Lee Kaiwen, and aside from Szalay, of course, I do keep forgetting about him, but Jae Hyun Park was a guy with a lot of promise. I was confident in him to win. Nakamura knocked him out. I think that Lee Kaiwen knocks out Nakamura, though. Here's the thing, like, it just comes down to the game plan. You cannot trust what Lee Kaiwen's going to look like in there, because he's showing up. He's knocked people out before he knocked out Dong Hyun So, but also he's gone out there and he's put on absolute stinkers against Kuyakanda. But I think that we're going to see Lee Kaiwen go out there, be aggressive. That was his mistake. He wasn't aggressive against Kuyakanda at all, and I think he's going to throw down I think he's going to make something happen. And we have a short notice matchup, and these are UFC matchups, as you can tell right here. Nyamjargal, Tumendemberel is fighting against Terrance Saeturn on this Road to UFC card, even though it is actually a UFC fight. Terrance Saeturn did take this fight on short notice, and he has signed a contract with the UFC as well. And I'll be honest with you guys, I watched Terrance Saeturn's fights, and I was quite impressed. I think that he's quite good. I genuinely do. Especially his most recent fight against Isaiah Torres, I consider that to be a very good performance, and that was a performance that he put up over 5 rounds, and he showed good cardio in that one there. Prior to that, you know, I didn't think that he was fighting the best competition in the world, but he was still kind of looking pretty good overall. And the thing that I think that he's going to struggle with the most against Tumendemberel is the power, because Tumendemberel does hit very hard for this weight class at 125 pounds. But Saeturn, what he is he is a wrestler that does kind of thrive on being able to pressure forwards. I don't love his striking defense, as I did hint to just then, but he will strike to close the distance, and then he will shoot the takedowns. And his takedown offense, like, it doesn't, like, he's not like getting takedowns at a very high percentage, but he will kind of chain wrestle. He won't do the loopy Godinis. He won't half-ass it. He will try and finish that takedown. And I do kind of respect that out of Saeturn. I think that he is going to be a fun fighter in the UFC. But the thing about Nyamjargal Tumendemberel is he has been making very, very rapid improvements in his career. I did actually pick him to lose against Carlos Hernandez, and he made it close. And I thought that he was going to lose to Hernandez on the wrestling. And Tumendemberel's takedown defense held up pretty well. And the reason why this was a concern was because against Topnoi Karam, I thought he lost this fight. And Topnoi Karam, as much as I love Topnoi Karam, he's just not that good. And then after that, he knocked out, he nearly knocked out Peter Daniso, and then he submitted him, like put him out cold. And then he got signed to the UFC, and I was like, be interesting to see how he goes. They give him a tough matchup, but I think now against Saeturn, especially when Tumendemberel has been preparing for a very hard matchup for him in Rey Saruya, I think we are going to see Tumendemberel be able to defend the takedowns of Saeturn, and I think on the feet, he's the more dangerous guy out of the two. But I am expecting Saeturn to, once again, be the underdog in this fight. And I do think that he's going to be quite fun. But I'm going to pick Tumendemberel to win this matchup. I think he does win by knockout. But this is a fun fight. I like this fight. I like the UFC signing as well. Be interesting to see how Saeturn can turn out in the UFC, as well as Nyamjargal as well. We don't really see that many fighters from Mongolia really at all. Now, Ming is taking on Bruna Brasil. I don't think Bruna Brasil's very good. Like at all, to be honest. Like at all. But I think she's good enough to beat Ming. Like I don't know like what the picks are. Most people are picking Brazil. I think that Brazil's probably gonna be the underdog in this matchup, but I wasn't that sold on Ming's performance, man. Like I know she got a crazy knockout win over Feng Shuai, one of the knockouts of the year. Probably the female knockout of the year, but she was losing that fight until she won that fight, you know. And then if you do kind of look into her other fights as well, she does have a lot of losses on the regional scene to girls that were on the no, she wasn't. I was about to lie to you guys again. I was thinking about someone else, but she did have a very good win over Dong Huashang, who is a wrestler. But Dong Huashang was like the most overhyped fighter I think I've ever seen in Road to UFC history. Like she was getting like videos made about her, uploaded on the UFC China Instagram, like full documentaries about how she's been training at the UFC PI for like 5 years, and I bought it. I got sold, alright? I'm sorry. I got sold on that nonsense. But after that, you know, she was losing to Feng Shuai. She was down 2 rounds, in my opinion. She was struggling with the size, she was struggling with the range, and Bruna Brasil is better at dealing with that. Now, as I did say, I really don't think she's very good. Because the way that Bruna Brasil fights is she's a Muay Thai striker, and she needs to be able to control the distance, and she needs to be able to be the one moving forward. If you close the distance against her, her entire game plan shuts down, and she is incapable of doing anything. So if Ming does actually go out there, attempt takedowns against Brazil, attempt to pressure Brazil, put Brazil on the back foot. I cannot speak. It's 11 PM, I guess. I don't know. I think that Ming could find success in this fight, but You know, I'm sorry, guys. I am just a little bit of a doubter right now. I think that Brazil is just going to kind of like push kicker away to a 29-28 decision in this matchup. But once again, it's a UFC fight. It's fun. I kind of like this, you know, because although these aren't really big UFC names, obviously, I think that it could maybe bring more people to actually watching the Road to UFC tournament. So I've got to be pretty happy about that. I'm sorry if my attitude was a bit sad. It is 11 p.m. And I'm tired, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Gonna be breaking down the UFC Shanghai card itself in the next video. I just haven't finished the tape study, and oddly enough, I don't know why I did this. I think it was because this is on the Friday night. I taped this before the actual UFC card, so yeah. Just forgive me for that. I don't really know what I was thinking in hindsight either, to be honest.